Well, I thought I'd share a little bit with you on these vacuum-operated headlight motors or headlight actuators that are used on Fords. You can see here the picture of two of them that came out of one of my 1973 Mercury Marquis. And these were used on so many different Fords of the era, from Cougars to 68 LTDs, 69 LTDs, to the Mercuries, like the 71, 2, 3, 4, all the way 5 through 8 even, and the Lincolns as well. All of them are slightly different designs, different stroke lengths on the arms, different diaphragm sizes. But as time goes on, what happens is the internals tend to degrade, and often moisture gets into the system, and then they rot from the inside out. The diaphragms degrade, and what you find is that the headlight doors will pop open after just a short period of time because they have a very heavy spring in them, and that spring is designed so that if they lose vacuum, they will open. Now, what I found in particular is that the 1973 through 78 Mercury actuators, in particular the 1974 through 78, tend to fail pretty frequently, at least now that they're, let's say, approaching 50-ish years old. The 74 through 8s used a relatively cheap and thin pot metal as the housing, and that tends to corrode from the inside and degrade. And so they are the ones that I find I'm replacing the most. It's very, very hard to locate for these full-size Mercuries anybody who can do the job. So years ago, I befriended somebody who could, and I bought a bunch of sets that I'm now installing in various places, which is another tip for you, is when you find somebody who does good work on something and you have a fair number of cars, get whatever work they do, get it replaced on all of them, because you don't know how long they're going to be doing the work. And on something like this, you're really kind of out of luck. And these cars do not look good with the headlight doors popped open. So another tip for you, if you're buying one of these Mercuries, make sure that the headlight doors stay down for an extended period of time, hopefully several days. If they pop open right after you shut the car off, these actuators are definitely bad. And there's really nobody left who rebuilds these, unfortunately, for the full-size Mercuries. And they have a very heavy-duty spring in them. You cannot open them very easily. They're crimped over. And like I said, there's a heavy-duty spring in there that you just don't want to mess with. So make sure if you're buying one that the headlight doors do stay closed. They often were outfitted with service part replacements because they tended to fail relatively early in the 1974 to 78 model years. So here's me crawling on the ground a little bit, taking a look at those that are in one of my 73 Marquis. This was a New Mexico car for all of its life, sold in New Mexico, bought in New Mexico, so it always lived in a dry environment. And that either hastened or slowed perhaps a little bit of the degradation, but these pop open after about a day on this Mercury. So here's what it looks like and where they're situated on a car like that. I should also note that different years have different styles of designs, in particular the 71s and 2s, and I believe the 69 and 70s, although I've never owned a 69 or 70, have a single actuator in the middle that activates both headlight doors. Late in the model year in 72, they switched to 2 actuators, and that continued all the way through to 1978. I will say the 71 and 2, the single actuator in the middle, they tend to be very reliable and not have any issues. The ones with the dual actuators have more issues, the ones that are used on 1972 and 73s, and they have even more issues if they're used on 74 through 78s. So just be wary of those if you are looking at one of the Mercuries of this era, and make sure that the headlight doors, as I said, stay closed. To that point, here's what one of mine looked like on my red 74 Mercury when I pulled it out. You can see the pinholes in the pot metal, and this is, again, corrosion from the inside. The 1974 Mercury was a car that was sold in Arkansas, always lived in Arkansas for its entire life. Never saw salt, never saw any corrosion, etc. Well, I'm sure it saw rain and things like that, but not any salt-covered roadways. And again, it corrodes from the inside out. So you may even want to, if you're looking at buying one of these cars, get under the car and inspect the actuator for any pinholes like you see here, because that certainly is not going to hold vacuum. Lastly, here's what one looks like from my 69 Mark III. You can see it's kind of a different style overall. These tend to be much more robust and not have issues, although mine were starting to pop open after a little bit of time, generally because there's a leak somewhere in the vacuum system, or the seal on the top of these tends to go bad sometimes too. So they are more robust on the Lincolns than the Mercurys and the Fords, but they do admittedly still have some issues. And if you're able to get a set of spares or have them rebuilt, I highly recommend doing so, just so that you don't have to deal with this in the future. And here's a quick video of me pulling out these actuators from one of my 73 Marquee Bromes.
For those who are wondering, this is the headlight motor on a Mercury. It's vacuum operated. You can see 2 vacuum lines go to it. And after all these years, they start to degrade. And they pop open after a short period of time. So getting these rebuilt, I actually have a set that's rebuilt. They sit up here in this pocket behind the bumper. And you can see I've already started taking the vacuum line off for this one. Here, it just sits here. This is just New Mexico dirt on here. But they're in a rough environment and the diaphragms tend to go after a while. So you just take 2 vacuum lines off, 2 nuts, take the clip off at the top on the door. This little rod here, I've already taken the clip off. You just push the rod through then, and it's out, and replace it with a new one. But that's how these operate on these Mercuries. So, not a bad job. On a Lincoln Mark III, these are not fun. On these 73 and 74 Mercuries, these are not bad. But this is what controls when you pull the headlight switch while you hear a hissing noise. It's diverting vacuum to these hoses to move the diaphragm to pull the door open or closed. And these have a very heavy spring in them to ensure that if you lose vacuum, the headlight door pops open as opposed to staying closed, so they fail open. This is used on many late 60s Fords, Thunderbirds, Cougars. They are all different. They have different arm lengths, different stroke lengths, different cans, but it's a similar setup. So Lincolns have them, Mercurys have them. The 68 Ford LTDs, as an example, have them. So it's just getting these fixed because they pop open after about a day, which means they're starting to go bad. They should stay closed for several days. Just thought I'd share that tip with you. And that's about it.
Hope you enjoyed this video that shows how some of these vacuum-operated headlight actuators work. Please like and subscribe. Feel free to drop a comment in the comment section as well, as liking and commenting helps the YouTube algorithm serve this video up to more people like you. And check out a few video thumbnails at the bottom left and right for YouTube suggestions on what to watch. And subscribe if you haven't by clicking the circular icon of the 67 Buick Riviera at the top left. Thanks again for watching.